Bread, the staff of life, they say. Is it really though? Is bread really the staff of life, or is it the rod of death? Today I want to talk about why I don't eat bread. So first of all, let's step back a little bit and get some context. Why is bread referred to as the staff of life? Well, it has to do with the agricultural revolution, 10,000 years ago and leading up to today. Living in climates outside our biological niche, which is the tropical jungle where we can get tropical fruit as tropical frugivores. Living in Norway, living in Europe, United States, we had to rely on grains to live, right? That was a food that was storable. You could store grains for a long time. That's why it's called the staff of life, because literally in those conditions, in those times, you would not be able to live without grains. Grains was the mainstay of the diet, still is today. So that's why grains and bread is known as the staff of life. Grains store well, you can grow them in climates like Norway, and that's pretty much why. Today though, now we have import and export. We can get fruit, we can get tropical fruit in Norway, we can get other foods as well. We don't have to rely on bread to stay healthy and alive. Indeed, we should probably avoid it. Personally, I do eat some bread. I said why I don't eat bread in the intro, and that's what I want to talk about in today's video. But let's first just talk about the pros of bread, right? Because there are some pros, even today, for bread. And so I do eat bread on occasion. It's very rare, but it is practical, if you think about it, right? I mean, just a few days ago, I went to a cabin with a friend of mine, and we just were there for 2 days. And I wanted to just pack light. I didn't want to carry with me, 10 kilos, 5 kilos, 10 kilos of bananas. And it's so difficult to carry them without them getting squished, etc. So I thought, I'm just going to go and I'm going to see what I can find in the store near the cabin. And of course, there's no ripe fruit at the cabin. There's no ripe fruit at the stores there. So no big deal. I thought for a couple of days, I'll just be eating potatoes and bread, basically. Practical. It's available everywhere. It's cheap. And if you're just desperate and you're hungry and you need to eat, well, bread can sort of do the job. But there are issues with it, and we'll get into that. One of the other pros with bread is that it is a low-fat, high-carbohydrate option, and humans thrive on a high-carbohydrate diet, and bread fits the bill in terms of a macronutrient ratio. So rather than relying on something high fat, something really fatty, you're much better off eating bread, right? If you're in a situation where you can either eat a ton of nuts or you can eat bread, I would go for the bread every single time. It just digests better, it's high carb rather than high fat. It gives you the carbohydrates and energy you need to sort of be active and live a healthy, active life. So that's another pro for the bread. Third pro, it's lightweight and calorie dense. Those two go together. So, if you're heading out on a trail, if you're hiking, bread can, you can carry with you a fair amount of calories without carrying too much weight. 1,000 calories of bread is it's not that much bread, whereas 1,000 calories of bananas, or mangoes, you're gonna have to carry a fair bit of water in there. So if you have water on your trip, if you're able to access water, then carrying bread or dried fruit or both will be a good way to sort of concentrate the calories in your backpack or whatever. So there are pros in certain situations. I find myself saying, hey, I'm just gonna focus on something different now, and I'm not gonna carry with me a ton of fruit. I'm just gonna eat bread for a couple of days. No big deal. I do also have the occasional pizza, once a month, twice a month. Whenever I feel like a pizza, I'll just have a pizza. And I'll pay the consequences, and let's get into those. Because there are a lot of cons, a lot of negative things about eating bread. And first of all, the biggest sort of issue that I have with bread is that it is boring. I mean, bread. It is just plain bread, pretty damn boring. when you're used to fruit, when you're used to like eating mangoes, which is just like so delicious, you know, extremely satisfying, bread is just like, why am I eating this? You know, it's like, what's going on? Why am I eating this? It's so boring. It's just plain, you know. Bread is very plain. Grains, they don't have an appeal to us humans in their natural state. We're not grain eaters like birds are. You know, they're grain eaters. We are fruit eaters. So bread really isn't really that satisfying, which is why if you buy bread, another problem with bread is that there's a lot of salt in it. Because it's so boring, right? So people put a lot of salt in it. So if you buy bread in a store, you'll also get a lot of salt into your body. And you know, it, depending on the amount, it might not be that big a deal. But it certainly isn't ideal. And personally, if I am going to eat bread, I prefer making it myself. And while I was at the cabin now, we actually did bake some little buns or whatever, just like plain flour and water, just like super simple bread, so I could just avoid actually, you know, eating too much of a normal bread. We also had some normal bread, of course. I ate a little bit of that, just with jam, you know, just slices of bread with strawberry jam. That's just what I had, you know, after my run, etc. So it's boring, it's salty, and then of course it's super duper dry. Right? I mean, that I just listed that as a pro, right? In certain situations, well, in this situation as well, for me at the cabin, it was a pro. Bread, you can just buy a loaf of bread. There you go. There you got like a few calories there, pretty much a day's worth of calories in that bread, or I don't know, something like that. And to carry with you a day's worth of fruit calories, that's a big, you know, that's a big deal, and it's difficult if you're going on a bus and then on a ferry and then walking across an island, and it's just so bread is very dry. But there's a con there, and that is that it is kind of dehydrating. You have to drink a lot of water in order to make up for that lack of water in the bread. I always find myself struggling to stay hydrated when I'm eating bread, and it sort of sucks the water out of your intestines. It's sort of, you know, I find it just makes me like feel really dry, even though I'm drinking water. It just doesn't feel right. So bread is dehydrating. And then there's the nutrition of bread, of grains really. They do not meet our nutritional demands as humans very well. They tend to fall short on a lot of different nutrients. Whereas fruit, mangoes, papayas, bananas, they just meet our nutritional needs a little bit better than what grains do. But of course, in the grand scheme of things, they're pretty good. I mean, if you think about it compared to something like meat, bread is just much closer to our nutritional needs, and as I said earlier, it's high carbohydrate. It gives us those carbohydrates that we need to sort of function at peak performance and optimal health. I think, you know, it's not the worst in terms of nutritional profile, but it's certainly not the best either. And then there's the anti-nutrients in grains, phytic acid, certain lectins, gluten, and different people react to these things differently, etc. But they're not ideal, right? Again, there are much better options out there. For example, rice, except for the fact that there's arsenic in rice, which is another issue, but if we disregard that, white rice is probably the easiest to digest, least offensive to the body in terms of anti-nutrients, etc. Not that lacking in nutrition, but certainly not as nutritious as whole grains. But then again, whole grains have more of the anti-nutrients again. So white rice, it's an alternative. If I was doing it more long term, more than 2 days at the cabin, I'd probably rely more on rice than I would on bread. And it's a similar situation where you can carry a fair bit of rice, but you have to obviously cook it, whereas the bread is ready. So if you're out hiking or something and you need food and you come to a store, rice isn't gonna work because maybe you don't have cooking utensils. So maybe then you just buy a loaf of bread and some jam, and then you have some instant food right there. So that's the value of bread. But if you have time to cook, rice is better. But then again, if you have time to cook, maybe potatoes and sweet potatoes are much better again. They're more closer to fruit nutrition. There's less anti-nutrients, But of course, then again, carrying it will weigh a little bit more in terms of their calorie density. They're less calorie dense than grains. So then again, you might as well just carry fruit, right? But still, fruit bruises very easily. Potatoes and sweet potatoes, they tend to sort of, they can tolerate a little bit more handling. You can just, put them in your backpack and that's, fine. So, but they're still better options than grains in terms of, in the ideal sense. And best of all, of course, fruit. I mean, fruit is the best if you can get it, if you're able to access it, if it's quality fruit that you can enjoy eating and that's nutritionally sufficient, and if you're able to carry it or just bring it home without bruising it or whatever. So fruit is obviously the best, and of all the fruits, probably bananas tend to be the most practical. Easily to, you can get it everywhere. It's easy to ripen. It's usually quite consistent in terms of quality. And I wrote about that in my book, The Little Banana Book. So if you're interested in, learning more about how to buy, ripen, store bananas, etc., you can check out my Little Banana Book here. And last but not least, for me, one of the biggest cons with bread is that it really just messes up my digestion a fair bit. I don't feel really great digesting bread. I had, even grains in general, I had some oatmeal for breakfast at the cabin, and I had bread for lunch, and when I was out for a run, I was getting this acid reflux situation going on. I was literally, like, at one point just like, ooh, and I had a little food in my mouth, and I was just like, ugh, like I threw up a little bit, basically. It was really nasty, and that happens to me. I get a lot of acid reflux when I'm eating bread or grains. My poop is just not good. I mean, I'm used to having good digestion with fruit and potatoes and stuff, just like perfect poop basically. But when I'm eating bread, it's not good. Okay, so it digests really poorly for me. My body does not like it. Some people are able to digest it without any issues, so it's somewhat of a personal thing, the digestion thing. But generally speaking, even if you're able to tolerate it quite well, I think you'll still be better off moving to a potato diet or rice diet, or better yet, a fruit diet. And a lot of people think, oh, fruit diet must be so boring, why are you depriving yourself? And actually, I wrote an article about this idea of, why I like to treat myself to the best food every day, and why actually fruit is not a deprivation diet. So if you want to check out that article, I'll put a link to it here. That's really it. Bread, it's not where it's at. Bread kind of sucks. But you got to look at things in a perspective, and you got to realize that in certain situations, bread can still be the best option. And if you're like me and you're able to just prefer eating fruit and actually eating healthy most of the time, and just sometimes you just for a cultural reason or just whatever, you just feel like, I want to have a pizza now. If you're able to do that like I am, then that's fine. There's no really big issues with having a little bit of bread now and then. What really matters is what you do on a consistent day-to-day basis. So for me, if I'm having a pizza, it's just, I know it's going to sort of mess up my digestion a little bit for the next 24 hours, but unless I have an important workout the next day or something like that, then I'm cool with that once in a while, sacrificing a little bit of digestion for just having a different experience with food, That's fine with me. So anyway, that's all. If you want to get more content from us here at Sweet Natural Living, we do have a Patreon page. You can click the link here, where we talk about other things as well as food, of course, and we have a Q&A. We answer your questions every month. We do a hangout, and we post some stuff there that we don't post otherwise. So maybe you want to check that out if you're interested. It will also support us financially, so we can keep doing what we're doing here on this channel. If you're interested, check it out. I hope your day is going well. Let me know down in the comments what you think about bread. Are you eating bread? What's your experience with it? Good, bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Is that what they say? So hope you enjoyed this video. Share it with your friends, give it a like, and subscribe, of course, if you're interested in more videos. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.